Fizz mains, it's time to meet the latest officer of the 104 Training Corps, Aster, our very own Star Wars Mikasa, who also seems to have lost her way. Aster is a physical flame Fortitude weapon that can be your main or sub DPS weapon. She also provides tank buffs and brings some interesting gimmicks to the battlefield.
What kind of gimmicks, you may wonder?
Aster brings a huge mobility feature for Fizz, and everyone else in fact, with her AOT-like ODM vertical maneuvering equipment that lets her fly to the sky and perform impressive movements in the air. Wanna fly? You've got it. Need some speed? Not a problem. Short on time? Watch me go. Just wow. With Aster joining the physical ranks, how strong are they now? What does she offer for tank mains? Let us find out. Aster is a physical main weapon with your typical armor dissolve, fusion of Fizz and Flame, Fizz Flame Resonance, and is classified as an on-field weapon, dealing damage to nearby enemies every 1.5 seconds. She's also a Fortitude weapon, which means
she's a tank.
Aster has good shatter and a decent charge, but nowadays, don't all characters have the same shatter and charge numbers? Really? As a DPS weapon, Aster's combat revolves around triggering her Overnova buffs, which will allow you to use her second skill once you reach 3 stacks. There's an indicator for the Overnova stacks and also Prism Blade, but you'll just attack until the skill changes anyway. You'll typically start combat buffing her with your 2 other weapons, then swapping to Aster's skill and doing normal attack chains until Prism Blade is ready. Using the Prism Blade deals big area damage to nearby enemies, and you're able to use it one time during the skill rotation. When using that Prism Blade sub-skill in Fortitude mode, Aster taunts nearby enemies for 5 seconds and grants nearby allies a 5% final damage bonus for each taunted target, up to 20% max. So, how do you use her skill and sub-skill effectively? Let's delve deeper. Before we get into the combat-specific descriptions, I must introduce you to her awesome movement abilities. Holding directional dodge lets you soar into the air with her grapple-like strings. Kinda feels like the flight apparatus relic, but so much easier to control. You then swing in the air, consuming energy as you move. Every dodge lets you swing continuously, so as long as you have a dodge, you can swing around. While swinging, pressing the jump key will halt the swing, and using dodge will let you swing again. If there are objects nearby, you will latch onto them without consuming energy, and fear not, even without structures, you'll still swing away magically at the expense of a little more energy. Wow! In swing mode and whenever you touch water, you'll glide like a hoverboard, and if you press dodge while hovering, you'll bounce up into the air again. In flight mode and if you are near walls, you'll be able to walk on them freely. Yeah, like that. You can move sideways or upwards, and pressing jump key will launch you into the air again. And finally, when you're in swing mode, if you press and hold the jump key, you'll enter her free flight form, allowing you to fly in forward motion. You can move to the left or right, but not upwards or downwards. Interesting. In this free flight form, it consumes the special energy pretty quick, but when it's depleted, you can always use the swing mode to regenerate that energy and continue flying, provided you have either one of these energy bars. Aster also has a special ability in this mode. When you aim a target and press attack, she will plunge forward and lock onto the target, applying a Starfall Shard effect to the target. When you're airborne and holding the attack button, Aster will spiral attack onto the target, executing it if Starfall Shard is present. This only works on non-boss targets in the overworld. New players could use that to clear some of those mini-bosses for quest or exploration rewards. Oh, and this execute skill doesn't work on the mecha enemies, so don't bother. I've got to say, Aster is an S rank in the mobility department. She combines some of the best movements and doesn't feel clunky at all. Sometimes it feels so relaxing to just fly around and admire the scenery. On to her normal attacks. Aster has ground and aerial normal attack chains. Similar to Grey Fox, she has two different types of attacks, with or without using her skill. Without using the skill, her normal attacks look really normal, and what's worse, they look like frost attacks. Are you kidding me? These normal attacks have a lower multiplier and are likely not used in battle. After using her skill, she now uses her lightsaber to do consecutive attacks with some really cool sound effects. Her attacks hit hard, have bigger multipliers, and look freaking awesome. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Now, for the important part, her skill. Using Aster's skill deals an AoE damage to nearby targets and enters the Photon Surge mode, granting hyper body and physical damage buffs. Her skill lasts for 30 seconds with a cooldown of 21 seconds, so you can expect it's always up. She has 3 branches of attack that you can spam or hold down your attack button to perform. In this mode, using her normal attacks or dodge attacks will accumulate 1 point of overnova every 3 seconds for a maximum of 3 points. After 3 points or stacks, you'll gain the lightsaber subskill Prism Blades. Using this subskill will deal big damage to nearby targets. In Fortitude mode, using her subskill will taunt nearby enemies for 5 seconds, and every provoked enemy gives your team 5% final damage buff that can be stacked for a maximum of 20% for 20 seconds. A nice buff for the team indeed, officer. Which brings us to the question, how do you rotate her? You start off with using her main skill, and once she drops that cool effect, you begin to normal attack the target, building those overnova stacks. 3-star Asters will build the stacks quicker and you'll notice the subskill ready, but just hold on to that. You want to do the 4-hit normal attack combo and then use the whole attack to consume those overnova stacks into the special attack combo. It's important you let the animation run through and not cancel them too early. Once the 3rd hit connects and you slam the ground, you can then use the Prism Blade subskill to finish it off with the big boom. It does feel satisfying. Here's a demo of that exact sequence again. Her Discharge, as majestic as it is, offers no mechanics at all, so you can safely jump cancel it in your main DPS rotations. But wait, even if you don't cancel the Discharge, it still deals pretty decent damage, so it's really up to you how you want to min-max your damage. Fortitude mains, using her Discharge will grant your allies 1.5 seconds of immunity. This seems familiar, doesn't it? Not sure if it's the same as a certain Zero Discharge. Might want to consider not skipping it instead. Trait-wise, Aster offers very little for DPS teams, so you'll need to fall back to the best trait among the physical units you team her up with. If your team has Claudia Stormeye, her trait will be the preferred choice, and if you're running altered teams, use Void Piercer's trait instead. If you pair Aster with Anka and Void Piercer, use Anka's trait instead of Void. On to the relics. For DPS teams, the preferred relic of choice would be the Buff Dealer at minimum 2 stars, best performance being 5 stars. Second relic would be the Battle Eye Mark II at minimum 2 stars, best performance being 5 stars. Other relics such as the Rifle, Mask, Bubble Gun are all usable if you don't have the Mark II or Buff Dealer ready yet. What is not recommended would be the Overdrive Shot, which was a staple relic in the older Fist teams. Aster's second skill consumes charges from the OD shot, resulting in charges depleting faster than your cooldown and a loss of damage overall. RIP my friend, you have served well. F2P players can still go with the Quant 2 stars and Omnium Shield 5 stars in place of those premium relics. Aster's matrices look very simple. At 0 stars, you gain a lot of fist attack and all elemental damage with additional final damage buffs for her 4-piece. It's a decent background matrix set if you don't have good fizz ones. The 2-piece effect gives you a stack of final damage buff after defeating an enemy for a maximum of 2 stacks. The problem here is, in single instances when you're fighting one boss only, you won't get to enjoy this benefit. Why? The 4-piece effect is for Fortitude mains, granting you 100% shield breaking capabilities, which is kind of okay since tanks need shield break anyways. If one day they decide to double the shields on bosses, it's gonna be so needed. For now and for DPS, it's kinda meh. Good to get a base A0 set if you're not into ranking, my friends. On to her team comps. The meta team of Aster would be pairing her with Claudia Stormeye, Void Piercer, and Aster being your main DPS weapon. This team currently tops the DPS charts as the highest passing comp. However, none of them have death immunity, so you'd better be careful during battles with high damage bosses or painful content modes. The second team, for those without Void Piercer, you can pair Aster with Anka and Claudia or Nola and Claudia. In single player modes, Anka performs slightly better than Nola, but for some tricky hard content with lots of boss mechanics, surprisingly, Nola just may perform better. All in all, they're not too far from each other. For those without Claudia, you can use the Altered Fizz team of Aster, Void Piercer, and Nola, or Aster, Void Piercer, and Anka. As mentioned earlier, Anka and Nola aren't too far away from each other. In the absence of Claudia's trait, you can choose Void Piercer or Anka's trait depending on which weapon you decide to go with. Looking at their theoretical DPS charts, Aster, Stormeye, and Void Piercer are at the top of the list. Not surprising given they are the most recent weapons in the Fizz hierarchy meta. At maximum investment, this should be the go-to team in all endgame modes. In second place, Aster, Stormeye, and Anka, the Mono Fizz team, are about 14% behind the top team. In third, we have Aster, Stormeye, and Nola, rounding up the meta teams for Aster and Claudia Stormeye. For meta teams without Stormeye, we have Aster, Void Piercer, and Anka. This team would perform better in content that has high resistance, as all 3 weapons have Shred, and Anka's trait has additional damage versus boss enemies. There's also the Altered Fizz team, with Aster, Void Piercer, and Nola, useful for some altered mains that want to get Aster as an option. This chart is based on maxed out supercomputing, weapons, and matrices, but does not feature any cosmic system buffs. For the F2P friends that want to enjoy Aster with some standard units, Aster can work with Zeke or Genono from the standard pool. F2Ps that have altered weapons such as Void Piercer or Nola can pair her with Zeke and Aster as your main DPS weapon. For the F2P matrices, I'd always recommend to get a base set of the latest matrices if you can. Otherwise, the 4-piece Skylar, 4-piece Habuela, 4-piece Zeke are all usable for your team. Aster's 1-star gives survivability and an increased damage for her sub-skill. This is good for new players that do not have good sustain. As I mentioned earlier, the meta team doesn't even have death immunity. You'll need some good mitigation when you are fighting powerful bosses. Her increased damage is a slight DPS boost, I say around 5% increment. At 3 stars, she gains a reduced interval for a skill effect. Fortitude mains do pay attention. This skill interval dropping from 9 seconds to 3 seconds will allow you to taunt enemies faster and holding that aggro better. For DPS teams, swapping her to off-field deals damage to nearby enemies after 5 seconds and lasting for 5 seconds. This sounds like a mechanic designed for the future if Aster is to be used as a sub-DPS. Additionally, after using her skill, you gain physical and final damage buffs. A pretty good star to get, I would say. 5 stars grant you the physical resistance shred and the damage reduction buff. And at 6 stars, you gain the usual final damage buffs, important for DPS min-maxers, nothing out of the ordinary. Fortitude, however, a new ability is acquired. 6-star Aster tanks can initiate battles with bosses and chunk away 10% of their HP right off the bat, as long as their max HP is above 90%. This is superb for timer battles where you're racing against time and very helpful for benedictions that run Icarus comps. He can now rest.
R.I.P.
So, for Aster's advancements, I'd say 1 star is really good for survivability if your team severely lacks it. DPS teams benefit from 3 stars, and if you're able to reach 5 stars, just go 6 stars, okay? You're literally there! As for our Fortitude mains, it's recommended getting 6 stars for Aster. By now, you should already have enough resources to max her without much difficulty since Fortitude weapons don't always come along. Same goes for new players that wanna go tanks. Put in the grind, get those pulls and max her out. In summary, as the latest addition to the Fizz team, Aster has a lot to offer and Fizz plus tank mains shouldn't be skipping her. In fact, those that love exploring shouldn't skip her as well given her high-tech mobility options and neat flying moves. Nothing is locked behind her stars, so just a base copy is indeed enough for your exploration needs. Fortitude mains and players that want to have a reliable tank on their team, it's recommended you try to get her to 6 stars. Of course, if resources are scarce, getting a 1-star Aster and her Matrices is fairly decent and helpful for your progression. Oh, and similar to Lynx's, Aster also changes colors depending on the time of the day. Her outfit turns into a darker shade at night and her hair seems a little darker too. Nice! The new characters would probably follow this trend moving forward. So, with so much awesomeness packed into one punch and a beautiful face to mask it all, will you guys be pulling Aster or will you wait for the next simulacra? Let me know in the comments and I'll see ya in the next one.